really to talk about here at the moment. There's no updates since we last talked around Geth. Nothing has changed there. Open Ethereum, a similar story. There's an RC, maybe an RC8 for 330 at the moment. I've left the notes in there from the last time we talked about this. There is a peering issue with Open Ethereum, and if you see that issue where you're losing your peers for no obvious reason, then there's a fix, like sort of documented in there on how you can fix it. On the Aragon side, there is an updated release for Aragon. I know I've seen some people struggling with issues with some of the latest versions. I don't know if anyone wants to talk about that. I don't personally have any knowledge on that, but maybe beware upgrading to the latest version. I'm not sure. Does anyone want to talk a little bit about that if they've upgraded?
Upgrade to the 24.1. I was doing something else. I've upgraded both the index node and the agent. Both seem to work fine.
No, it was about Aragon. Like,
Aragon.
I don't even know what the latest version of Aragon. I'm just still pissed that it broke all the subgraphs.
Yeah, we're still running an old-ish version. I'm super afraid of upgrading. I don't know. Like every time I try to upgrade Aragon, it magically gets problems somehow.
Well, there's no concept of a stable release with Aragon, is there? In terms of the way that they do their workflow,
there is a stable branch.
Is there? How far behind is it though?
It's as stable as you can hope it is.
Because I've always been going straight to the development branch, because a lot of what a lot of the stuff that's going is stuff that we, the development that's going. Okay, so that's 5 days ago. Okay, fair enough.
Yeah, they usually update it every week. The stable one. I think it's going with Devil.
The stable branch, they basically create every release out of the stable branch. So, and I think they only update the stable branch when there's a new release. It's basically helping you to track new versions.
Yeah.
If you want to auto build from GitHub commits and deploy like within the next minute.
I mean, that's what I've been doing. I've been pulling the master and compiling the master every time. So I think I've been lucky. I've dodged a bullet, honestly, so far. Although I'm not using Aragon in production yet. I only use it for testnet.
We had to use our Aragon because I think 2 or 3 subgraphs were stuck on Open Ethereum. And one of them was 𝗨𝗶𝗟𝗃 whatever with like even with the environment variables that Leo suggested, was still stuck when he had to, and we had to change to Aragon to fix it. And then once we changed to Aragon to fix it, we changed back to Open Ethereum, and it's our whole database is borked. But
yeah, I've got that on the agenda, and we repo watch. We'll cover that off. I think Leo's going to join us today. Is Leo with us right now? No.
Not yet.
Would you ping him? Could somebody ping him to see if he's able to join us? I think he said he wanted to.
I'll write on Slack. Give me a second.
Great, thanks. Okay, so let's move on to the index or tooling section. We have Yarkin from AnyBlock Analytics with us today. Welcome, Yarkin.
Hi, everyone. Hi. Nice to be here. Nice to meet you all.
So Yarkin has been developing a optimization tool that I believe your first release was quite some time ago, Yarkin, and you've been making some pretty significant upgrades to it over time.
Yeah, that's right. I think the first version we released early this year. It was a command line tool. It's still work in progress, but we now have a web app basically, and many more features, and there will be more features in the future.
Very cool. So do you want to share maybe your screen with us and show us the tool and where it's at today?
Yeah, sure. Sorry. Can you see my screen?
Yep. Graph allocation optimization script.
Yep, works.
Okay, I want to begin with why we built that tooling. Well, it's actually the basic idea is that, as you already know, allocations are very important for the revenue stream for indexes. And depending on the amount and distribution on the different subgraph, the indexing rewards are calculated. I'm not sure what the process for all of you is when choosing where to allocate. But it is possible to manually choose the subgraphs or set a rule and so on. But you can optimize the indexing rewards mathematically because the indexing rewards follow a simple equation, which you can see here. I won't go into the detail, and I think most of you know that. And because the indexing rewards follow a simple equation, we developed a tool which calculates the optimal allocation distribution using optimization algorithms, linear optimization algorithms, which we developed with the 𝗨𝘀𝗶𝗀 library. And the model calculates the optimal distribution for different subgraphs. For tooling, you can choose if you want to use the web application or the command line tooling. The command line tooling will be useful for automatization purposes. So that's still a bit in work in progress, but nearly finished. And in the upcoming weeks, it will be possible to allocate based on the optimization results with a command line tooling, with a cron job. And the other way is using the web app, which I'm going to show you now. Just before that, if you want to use the tooling, just go to the repository, clone it, and then you can navigate to the documentation and go through the quick start guide with installing the dependencies, creating a Python environment, virtual environment, and setting up the environment file. When you do all of this, you can basically start the web application by running streamlit run app py, and this starts this web GUI. Basically, what you can do here is input your index address, choose the network which you want to optimize your allocations for. Sorry, the push to talk is getting in the way. But basically, you can choose mainnet and testnet. You can set the flag to automatization to true or false, but that's still in a feature branch that is not pushed to to the master branch. And you can set different toggles on and off, like the blacklist feature. The blacklist feature is something we had to develop or take a lot of time for, because we are checking for all the different circumstances to not fall into these broken subgraphs or bot bait subgraphs that or depreciated subgraphs. And this is a feature. The blacklist is something you should always use. Only not if you want.
Can I ask a question on that, Jarkin? Is that blacklist feature like an automated feature, or is there like you can build a list of subgraph hashes that you want to ignore?
It's both, actually. You can supply a list of hashes of subgraphs you want to not allocate to. Also, you can supply subgraph developers you want to avoid that are known for broken subgraphs or bot-bait subgraphs, but it also creates or builds automatically the subgraph, the blacklist, by checking for the subgraph status, by checking your indexer database for subgraphs that are not in sync or have fatal errors, and so on. So yeah, it's kind of both, to be honest. But it's still not guaranteed to. There is no guarantee that you will not fall into a broken subgraph regardless, because the subgraphs can get broken during the allocation phase. That's why we also included another check if you run it in automation, where we get the pending rewards for location and check in hourly intervals if the pending rewards don't go up. And if the difference between these intervals is 0, we recommend, or in the automated way, deallocate these subgraphs automatically in the epoch when they got broken.
That's cool.
Yeah, that's a feature which
excuse me, why would you recommend deallocating immediately after they got broken? That's a very bad way of dealing with that.
Why is it bad, if I
because imagine you're having the hosted service subgraph that it fails, and then the hosted service immediately deletes your subgraph, and your data is like all your website is becoming you don't have a website anymore, so to speak. That's literally what happens if you force everyone to deallocate, or like recommend everyone to deallocate from a broken subgraph.
I think you got a good point, but in the last few months, we always had the problem of broken subgraphs, which we didn't find out about fast enough. And then we had to close them manually with 0x0 POIs. And
no, you can close them with the last working POI, and you're still going to be rewarded. So that's been changed for like a while ago.
Yeah, I know that it was a safety measure, to be honest, because we had local problems and got into a dispute and so on. So that's a feature which we could, or a feedback which we could incorporate and change. So that's good feedback in that sense.
Okay, cool.
Yeah, also we included a flag for Slack alerting, which you can enable in the environment file, basically by providing a webhook. That way you can get alertings for every optimization run if it reached a threshold and so on. Another important parameter is the threshold to set. Here it is set to 20%. This means if the new allocation or the optimization results are not better than 20% from the previous rewards, it won't recommend to change the allocations. You can set it freely. We choose 20% because we didn't want to always change allocations and waste too much money on transaction gas fees.
So that's the threshold of rewards per period, whatever, per epoch or day or hour, right?
Yeah, that's basically, that's the threshold where you can set also the threshold interval, which is here. You can set the threshold based on the weekly calculated rewards or the daily ones.
Got it.
I think the parallel allocation flag can be removed soon. I think that's depreciated, if I saw that in the GitHub repository correctly. I'm not sure there. Does any one of you know that?
I'm not sure.
Yeah, that's correct. It's being deprecated, so parallel allocations will no longer be a thing moving forward.
Okay, then this flag will be removed. Also, there are a few more parameters like the reserve stake, which you don't want to use in allocations. A minimum allocation per subgraph, which should be 0. Or if you want to allocate to all subgraph, it could be higher, but we set it to 0. And a filter for the subgraphs where you manually can say that they should at least have 100 GRT signal or 100 GRT allocated or more, as you wish. The tooling provides data for previous runs, which are saved in a JSON file so far. With information about the use parameters, network data, price data, current allocations, and so on. This can be used for further analysis or data analytics, basically, if you want to get more insights into your allocation optimization and allocation performance. Also, we built a few historical performance metrics, which you can filter by closed, active, or combined allocations. And these are time series data, basically, for the reward rate per day. Another feature which we are building so far, but which is still a work in progress, is a do-it-yourself chart builder if you want to visualize different data as well, but I won't go into detail there. And also historical performance data. Here we visualize the historical indexing rewards in GRT, in fiat, and also visualize when allocation optimizations did take place. The downfall here is because the day is not finished, so our hourly rewards didn't drop to nearly 0. A few more charts, which I'm not going into detail for now. But when you run the optimization script with the parameters you choose, you get basically these results where you get the current, a few metrics like the current rewards, weekly rewards, and so on, the current pending rewards, a few more metrics. And also the important part is basically here, the tooling outputs if you reach the threshold or if you didn't reach the threshold. And if you didn't reach the threshold and didn't set the automation to true, it won't automatically reallocate.
Got it. That was going to be my next question, was whether you could run this manually as well, rather than just set and forget, because that would definitely be what I would want to do if I was to start using a tool like this.
Yeah, that's something we did think about, because running this automatically requires a lot of trust or digging. Well, not trust, but you should first check it manually, and if you trust it, then you can run it automatically. That was our thinking. First try it and then automate it, basically. And we also set it to false for now. And in this run, we didn't reach the threshold. Even when the hourly rewards did go up, but the transaction cost and the threshold led to a result where the threshold is basically not reached. Here we display the subgraphs that are recommended for now. The blacklist is off. I run it without the blacklist parameter, because with the blacklist parameter, the optimization run takes quite some time longer. And at the bottom, you get for the manual run, you can get the basically the commands which you can input into the index CLI, where you first have to deallocate and then allocate again. And for the automatization part, we are currently working with the indexer agent management endpoint. If you set it to true, GraphQL mutations with the deallocate for the indexing set rules are sent to the indexer agent via the endpoint. And after deallocating, the script waits for the event filters, which it gets with Web3 Pi. And after getting after knowing that the deallocation did take place on the chain the allocation script is run, or the allocation rules are set also. That was a quick rundown of the web app. You can run all of this in the command line as well with the parameters and get output in the command line. And yeah, in the future, we want to set up, we want to include more features, we want to Dockerize it, and we have a roadmap in the documentation basically with things in the backlog we would love to build with the help of the Graph Foundation, and it's still work in progress, and it will get better and more feature rich over time. And we would love if some of you or all of you try our tooling and give us feedback, ideas, and basically tell us about bugs, because we want to improve it and give something back to the community.
Excellent. I think tools like this are really important for indexers, because if you just look at the whole playing field right now of where where the network is in terms of optimal stake, many subgraphs are all over allocated, right? So what that means is that indexers are punishing each other and themselves by allocating to subgraphs that are, they haven't been optimized in terms of allocation. Maybe an indexer isn't aware of how to do the maths behind that. Maybe they've just not considered it at all, and they just pick subgraphs that they think are good. The more indexers that are running optimization like this, the more revenue that all indexers and their delegators will make at the end of the day, right?
That's right. Also, it would completely benefit the ecosystem when the allocations are distributed better between the subgraphs and are not concentrated around a few big subgraphs, as you already said. So that not only the indexes, but also the different subgraphs and the consumers or developers would benefit from it.
Have you had any thoughts about how this tool might develop as query fees start to become significant?
That's something we did think about, because that's a feature we would love to include, because I think when the query fees become more important, we have to include them as a constraint into the optimization script, because you cannot get both into the maximum. Basically, you can't maximize the results from the Cobb-Douglas function and the query fees and from the indexing rewards. So you need to find a middle way, which you can get with the optimization script then when it's included. But that's something we really want to include in further steps. But for now, it wasn't that important, because the indexing rewards were more important for the first part.
Got it. One other thing that, I think in terms of a feature would be interesting in terms of how things work today is, you've done some great work there in terms of, here's a script to do all your deallocations. Here's a script to do the new allocations. What would also be interesting to me is, could you also output, based on the subgraphs that your indexer is currently syncing, whether it's off-chain or on-chain, here's also the subgraph that you would need to add maybe as off-chain first before you just decide to go down this allocation configuration, so to speak. That would be really useful, at least for me, in the way my workflow works.
Yeah, we did think about that also. It would be great to know that before, because syncing all the subgraphs or newly syncing them could take a lot of time. So that's something that would be awesome to integrate, and I'm writing it down for
awesome
some feature for the future.
Hey, I also have a question. Thank you for this presentation. I think this is awesome. I really would like to use it. Somehow I asked myself, how can we give like new subgraphs a chance? As I understand, we first have to sync the subgraphs, and then when this optimization tool sees that they are on chainhead, then it starts allocating to it. Yeah.
You don't have to have them in sync. The allocation tooling can show them before, basically, when they are the optimal subgraph to allocate to.
Okay, so I can basically allocate to subgraphs that I didn't sync yet, and then it just starts syncing.
Yeah.
Okay, that's cool. And then I would also need to know, like, how long will it take on average or something to sync that subgraph? There is obviously a big discrepancy between OpenEthereum and Aragon and whatnot, but if, like, let's say this can go to some Docker Compose setup and then everyone installs it, maybe there would be a way to have some service collecting data about how long it takes to sync a subgraph so that you can just show it in the interface.
Benchmarking.
That
Kind of,
sounds like a cool feature. I cannot say how long it would take on average. As you said, it depends on the subgraph and many different features, but having a benchmark and collecting these informations would be awesome. If the indexers want to basically submit and include this data, we could work something out of it. But it would be opt-in, basically.
Yeah, like there's a lot of, let's say, new subgraphs that take maybe 2 hours to sync, and then you sometimes stumble upon something that takes you 2 weeks. And that's a big difference. Like, I would like to give new small subgraphs a chance because I think usefulness of the product itself depends on how fast new developers that submit a subgraph to the decentralized network get coverage through the decentralized indexers. And right now, I'm not sure how fast this actually gets picked up. Maybe it takes only a couple of hours, but yeah, for bigger subgraphs, it will probably take a long time.
Yeah, that's something we did think also about, because when you run the optimization script and get some subgraph you don't really know about as a result and start syncing it, it just you don't know how long it will take. Therefore, you're completely right. It would be awesome to have a benchmark.
Yeah, I would love this. And I also would like to know how much space do I need on my disk? Like recently I synced one subgraph that was a Uniswap subgraph, I think. And it took me a couple of weeks, I think, but I was clever enough to just sync it off-chain and then allocate later to it. And I only wanted to allocate like 1 million GRT to it. And once I did, the signal was pulled. And yeah, I basically didn't make any money on that.
Ouch.
But it took me 10% of my disk space. So I know we have tools to just clean up the database and stuff, but it's kind of annoying. It would also be good to know this beforehand. Also to not run out of disk space if you you just trust the automatism, then the automatism also has to take this into account.
You know what would be nice? A peer-to-peer query between indexers to tell each other how big subgraphs are somehow, because like it can be carried from the database.
It goes again to, you know, the work that 𝗨𝗂𝗂𝗧𝗂𝗧 and 𝗨𝗨𝗂𝗀𝗧𝗧 have done on 𝗨𝗨𝗀𝗀𝗀𝗀, right, which is basically a data sharing network. And, you know, the more we talk about these things, like information intelligence that you know, indexers want, the more and more it makes sense to have some kind of peer-to-peer network between indexers, right? Share that.
That's
opt-in, opt-out.
That's also a thing we did think about, not only for the syncing status, but also sharing the historical rewards, or the optimization, or how different indexes allocated. That would be also interesting to gather this data.
Definitely, yeah. One other thing that comes to mind for me, 𝗀𝗏𝗂, is maybe this is already part of the product, but what the subgraph oracle assessment when a subgraph exceeds, I think, 100 signal. Do you take that into consideration in maybe the blacklist or somewhere else when doing the optimizations? So maybe if a subgraph has got less than, hasn't yet been assessed by the oracle to see whether it would have indexing rewards, then you would ignore that subgraph.
To be honest, that's something we didn't think about so far. So that's a great feedback, which should be included in that sense.
Yeah, I've been burnt by that once so far. I'm trying never to be burnt by that again, but it definitely happens.
I didn't hear about that so far, but so that's something completely new for me, to be honest.
Sure.
But, yeah.
We can talk about that offline if you like, and have a chat about what it looks like.
Yeah, that would be awesome.
It would also be cool if the profitability of my indexer was somehow integrated into a Grafana dashboard, and then I could just use all this alerting that is anyway based on Grafana or Prometheus to also send me a message if I'm losing steam.
In further iterations, we would love to also supply this tooling as an endpoint, as an API, which you can basically use to get, on the one part, the optimization results and also the historical performance. So this would also be cool. And I don't know if anyone would be interested, but I think for many people it could be useful.
Kind of Prometheus metrics endpoint, maybe. Then all the tooling that's already in place could just connect there.
That'd be lovely.
I'm noting it down.
So I understand that at least part of this is covered under maybe is it a Wave 1 or 2 grant, 𝗀𝗏𝗂? Am I right there?
Yeah, you're right. Didn't I say that at the beginning? I'm not sure.
Yeah, you might have.
It's in the Wave 2, so it was a part of the grant Wave 2.
Cool. So have you hit your, I guess, grant milestones to this point with what's been delivered so far?
So we hit the milestones, just a few small things like the Dockerization is missing, and we are already in talks and brainstorming about more ideas and features which could be used to extend it and implement.
Brilliant. I would love to see this in Wave 3, definitely.
Can I say something?
Go ahead, Nick.
Hello. Thank you, 𝗀𝗏𝗂, for this presentation. As you possibly know, in P2P we have a little similar automatization, and I want to warn you because you create, as I called, version 2 automatization, and there is a problem. The problem that, for example, we couldn't use this tool because it has a number of disadvantages. For example, just imagine you have 10 subgraphs and 10 allocations, and one of them just go to 0 signal tokens, and that means that there is no reason to index this subgraph anymore. But your tool, if we, for example, if we are using your tool, we have to reallocate all of our allocations or all of our subgraphs to fix this problem, because your current version just manipulate the whole structure, the whole subgraphs, not like each one.
In the current feature branch, the deallocation via the indexer endpoint does only deallocate the subgraphs which you want to deallocate, basically. So not all of them. That's
No.
just for the script creation so far, which will be depreciated further iterations.
I mean, not about like reallocate. I mean, like calculate possibly, profit. And this is just a warning, because in the future you will have to recreate or redevelop the whole program, because your current system just depending on the whole structure, the whole list of the subgraphs or your allocations, for example. And this is just just not working.
I think to understand that, I need to see an example, I think.
So what I understood from what you just said is that there is a subgraph that I allocated to that loses all the signals, so I need to kill it. But then basically the program would calculate the weight of the existing subgraphs that I'm still allocated to differently, so that I kind of close and reallocate to each of them, right?
Right.
Yeah, you have to reallocate all of your subgraphs or all of your allocations, instead of just close one of it with 0 signal tokens and reallocate these tokens to some different. This is just one of the problem. The another one is that in this case you have to use just your current synced subgraphs, not just from the whole network. I mean that this tool has to have like a list about all subgraphs, and it has to choose from subgraphs from this list to allocate to it, not just from like random list or manual created list.
So current state of the network, right, which will be impacted when you move your allocation, your broken allocation.
Yeah, right.
So if you were to actually make the right decision, you would actually have to make it by telling the tool, I'm going to take this allocation off that subgraph, now make the computation, right? Otherwise, it's going to give you bad advice.
That's for one.
Okay,
And then
right?
you also, somehow you just have to factor in that there is a cost with closing and opening allocations, right? Otherwise, there wouldn't be a problem if the tool just closes all allocations and reopens it with a slightly different configuration.
Yeah, that's why I just try to warn Garkin, because I know, because we already did it before in our automation, and that in the future they have to redevelop the whole script, because if you try to work with with the list, it just doesn't work like that.
Maybe do you want to send him your script?
I'm not sure actually, because it depends of politics of politics of my company. So
to be honest, I have to think about it. That's a good point you're bringing up, and it would be awesome if you would help us or also contribute to it, because for now I have to think about that for a solution and how we could circumvent that. But thank you for the feedback. How did you go along with that problem?
Thank you too.
So sorry, did you have a solution for that problem in your working script?
Yes, we have. The solution is just you have to recalculate each allocation, each subgraph. You have to like go back to the start with the new calculations and recalculate it again and again and again and again before you before your list just end.
Okay, cool. It would be cool if I could contact you and talk more about this. It would be good to get more insights about that.
Sure.
Awesome, new friends.
Yeah, I think I understand the problem, but it sounds like, 𝗀𝗂𝗧𝗧, it would be useful if you and Nick were able to, talk offline about that, if that's a possibility.
Yeah, I will contact you, Nick.
Yeah, okay. Okay, so we spent a lot more time on that than I expected, but 𝗀𝗂𝗧𝗧, thank you very much for coming and demoing the tool to us today. If people want to reach out to you, what's the best way to reach out to you and any blog?
The best way would be directly over Discord, or you can reach me via email as well. I think in the documentation, all the contact details are provided as well, but Discord would be the best.
Excellent. Thank you.
Thank you. Thanks for the opportunity to present it.
So let's we're maybe have 15 minutes left, so I want to make sure we cover the most important things in the list. I just want to, on the recorded call, make sure and mention there's a few different things in the tooling section, so take a read there. Specifically, though, I want to mention on the recording 𝗨𝗂𝗧𝗧𝗧𝗧. 𝗨𝗂𝗧𝗧𝗧𝗧 is the tool that 𝗨𝘀𝗧𝗧𝗧𝗧 and 𝗨𝘀𝗧𝗧 have worked on in order for indexers to share POI data down to the very block, including off-chain and on-chain subgraphs. It would be great to see more indexers on that. The more data we have, the more indexers we have, the better decisions we can make. This tool, I think, is critical in our transition from mainly Open Ethereum indexing to Aragon indexing. So, it'd be great if indexers could find time to take a look at the tool and deploy it and add your indexer to the data. Now, on the repo watch side, we have Leo with us from 𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏 today to talk a little bit about an issue that's been impacting some subgraphs, including EIP721. Welcome, Leo.
Hello, hey guys.
Hey, so I've taken some notes down, Leo. I understand that maybe we should just talk through the problem, and then there's a couple of questions you had. I think you wanted to sort of poll the indexer community with a couple of questions about the issue.
Sure. So you want to go through the points in your notes?
So I've just got the questions down, and then I've got a link to the original issue, geth eth call errors. So maybe if you just want to talk through the problem a bit, and how we solve the problem in the next release.
Okay. So first thing, I just want to. Anybody missed it? It's an announcement. I guess like a.
Sorry, you're breaking up. You're breaking up, Leo. Can you move your mic closer to yourself?
Okay, is it better?
That sounds better. Yeah.
Okay. So just in case anybody missed it, we had a bug in version 0.24.0. If anybody, upgraded to that version, you were likely affected. So you should have in the announcement channels an upgrade to 0.24.1, just in case anybody missed that. And if you did upgrade to 0.24.0, take action having your wrong POIs. But on the issue at hand here about the ETH call, so the thing is that in the latest hard fork, Ethereum in general bumped was like the whole block gas limit. But what affects us is that also affected the default gas limit for the ETH call JSON RPC from 25 million that it used to 50 million. And so we bumped the default to 50 million, the gas limit. And also one issue we had was that some subgraphs would get stuck because they would make ETH call that was too expensive, that was over the gas limit, and that was considered non-deterministic. And so on the next release, we're going to consider that to be a deterministic error, the out of gas. And at that point, we cannot mess with the out of gas configuration anymore unless it's a protocol wide change or some versioning. So please do not set that environment variable, or set it to 50 million, which is the correct value. And if you on the next release, that's going to be the case. And also the out of gas error will be considered deterministic by default. And if you have a subgraph that is stuck on that error currently, you can fix that without having to wait for the next release by simply saying that there's an environment variable that you can set. If you're using GEF, you set it to out of gas. If you're using Open Ethereum, you can also set it to error, and then the subgraph will move past that retry loop of retrying the ETH call. But then on the next release, don't worry about any of that anymore. But that this situation also gets us that sometimes there are environment variables which are there more for like debugging purposes, and but there is like a single canonical graph that should be used in production setups for indexing the network. So we're thinking if we should introduce some configuration validation for this. Yeah, so I don't know if anybody else has opinions on this, because it's like a sort of like deterministic configuration and possibly non-deterministic configuration modes. I'd assume that we might want to make it the default, the safest mode, the default. So validating that configurations have the correct values, and not starting up GraphNode at all if there's something wrong in the environment. But then people who are have something different, that's sort of like you have to adapt when you upgrade to the 25. Probably the next release. Yeah, so I just don't know if this could be opt-in, this could be opt-out. I assume that opt-out is probably the safest. So I just want to know if anybody has that sort of configuration, sort of like network mode for GraphNode.
The only thing that comes to mind to me immediately is that I have a number of, I guess, block ingester type environment variables that I've tweaked over time to try and improve performance. And I wonder if a validation feature like this would, stop the node from running if I didn't, if I've modified those values.
I assume that most configurations are okay, especially most of those that we have documented. This gas limit isn't even documented, because we really want people to set it, but it was needed as a workaround. But the only thing that I'd advise you to be careful with your threshold variable.
Yeah.
Because if your GraphNode ever sees a reorg larger than that, you might have to.
Yeah, the ones that I've played with are like Ethereum target triggers per block range, max block range size, block batch size, RPC parallel requests. But there is one there for reorg shit threshold I've set to 200. I'm guessing that's actually the default. And an ancestor count as well, which I believe is also set to a default.
I believe the default reorg threshold is currently.
I think most of those variables wouldn't affect data determinism, Jim. But like generally, I think that we shouldn't require indexes to have, you know, an intimate knowledge of the graph node internals to the extent that they would be able to distinguish between configuration that would impact data determinism and configuration that wouldn't. So I think if we were to by default validate that all configuration that is relevant to deterministic output is, you know, what it's expected to be, which would effectively be the defaults, that would, you know, go a long way to ensuring that we have determinism in the network, particularly because sometimes, you know, people can kind of fix indexing of a subgraph by tweaking one of these values, not realizing that the failure, you know, should have happened, and it's a deterministic failure. So yeah, I think, you know, requiring some opt-out flag to be passed alongside any configuration overrides that would affect data determinism makes a lot of sense to me.
Can we call it super shadowy coder mode then, or something like that? Whatever that meme was.
Scary, non-deterministic.
Yeah. Deterministic-ish mode.
Yes, and just to be clear, like the defaults on the current latest release are safe. Just like you have like this combination of variables to have anything go wrong, and we're just going to be extra careful in the next release. About the reorg thresholds, talking about this environment variables, I think the current default is 50. I don't know if in your experience, especially on test nets, maybe that's too low as a default. Maybe raise it to 100. Also important bike chat.
Got it.
Yeah, I think one of the questions I have is that if some of those determinism affecting variables would change between releases, will we have determinism issues or discrepancies depending on who upgrades when their grab node?
So your concern is if Firehose would in some of these concerns, switching from the current block ingester to Firehose-based ingestion?
No, these out of gas errors and other variables or settings that affect the determinism. Imagine indexer A upgrades today to the version that has updated settings, and indexer B updates tomorrow, and another one updates in a week. Could this kind of different update timelines to versions that have new settings on variables that do affect the determinism of a subgraph, could those still introduce point discrepancies, basically?
The defaults will always be deterministic, and any changes to the defaults are not going to silently break that. And if some situation arises that that's going to be well announced and not going to cause any slashing.
I think
so the concern here is like if you're manually setting these values. And just to be clear that in the next release, like we're going to validate such that if you are manually setting values, you can be safe that you're only manually setting things you can fit with, and you're not fiddling with saying that you're not supposed to. But I'm not aware in the current release of any besides this out of gas, like this so reverse thing that we went through. Unless you set like those two environment variables at once, I'm not aware of any other footguns environment.
One other thing I'd like to raise around this as well is I don't know if we actually talked about it while we started recording or not, but I think we need to look at improving our overall sort of work stream for new releases, so that things like this ideally would be picked up in the test net rather than on mainnet. So need to think about it more, but I think we need to put a working group together to see how we can unify both the process for testing all the indexer agent stuff and the node stuff as well on testnet, so that we pick these things up before they hit mainnet, because it has been quite a pain in the ass, to be frank, sort of dealing with this problem in production.
Yeah, I definitely agree that, for example, the 0.24.0 situation was stressful for everyone, and it signals that we need a more robust program.
Yeah, so let's work on that. Thanks very much, Leo. Timelines, are we too early to talk about when we might expect 0.25?
Yes, I don't have a key to give right now. Hopefully releases are going to be getting on a more of a cadence, but I haven't nailed that.
Cool. We have a few minutes left, and again, there's more stuff to talk about than there is time to talk about it. But I want to make sure that we raise the profile again on the delegation capacity as a curve proposal, because there's a lot of really great work being done here by community members and foundation members. Oliver, do you want to maybe use the last few minutes to talk about where we're at with this and what you want from people in terms of contribution?
Yeah, so it's too much to share what I have provided as insights. It's become too big of a topic. The short version of it is that the initial idea, which is all based on improving stake decentralization, has been raised by ETHWiz to change the delegation cap from 16x to a variable that would essentially result in larger indexers having a lower cap and smaller indexers having a larger cap. At face value, it looks like a no-brainer to support that idea if you are, in fact, supportive of stake decentralization. But the data that I've shared actually provides a little bit more insight into how we can project how effective those changes are going to be in the network with regards to actually working in practice in the way that we would anticipate them. And there are some serious questions that I'm asking, in particular going back to data that we find in the network where smaller indexers today are not suffering from a lack of cap size. They just don't get any delegations. And that is more due to the fact that the larger indexers have too much capacity available. And that is one of the big issues that we need to think about, in terms of the primary goal being more the reduction of larger indexer cap size versus expanding smaller indexer cap size. If you had to choose between the two, you would want to pick the former. The other part is also to think about, when we solve for this problem, and if we're serious about stake decentralization improvements, is to think about aggregate network capacity. And right now we have over 14 billion GRT in terms of capacity available in the network. And that is 3.8 billion past what's even the total token supply. And that means in practice that facilitates stake centralization even further, because the cap comes into play for fewer and fewer indexers. The last piece of that is a reset that is static, meaning as a snapshot in time, is what I demonstrate is also going to result in inefficiencies down the road, where you can project in a few years down the line, even with a reset of the formula that we have, that we're ending up in the same position again. So that is the short version of it, but there's a lot more to it. I have proposed in the forum that I'm happy to do a workshop to really dive deeper into that, because there's a lot to talk about. And if that is something that people that are interested in this idea and proposal want to have, just voice your support for that and request in the forum.
Thank you very much, Oliver. So there's a link to that forum post and to Oliver's review at the very bottom of the notes, guys. Take a look when you have some time, and signal with your likes on the forum. That's very important in terms of signaling whether you want something or not, if you agree with something or you don't. Yeah, so thanks very much, Oliver. We're at the top of the hour. So again, thanks to everybody who's contributed and in the conversation today. Thanks, Jarkin, for demoing the AnyBlocks tool. We will see you next week at Graph Index or office hours.